What if everything we thought we knew about the ancient world was turned upside down by something no bigger than your palm? Deep in the dust of a forgotten Bronze Age settlement, archaeologists stumbled upon an unassuming artifact, a tiny clay tablet etched with strange symbols. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, just another fragment of a long-lost civilization. But when researchers took a closer look, they realized this little object held secrets that would rewrite history. This isn't just a relic, it's a key to understanding how an entire civilization communicated across vast distances, bridging gaps we never knew existed. Think about the last time you sent a text message or made a phone call. Communication today is instant, effortless, but 4,000 years ago, it was anything but. Or so we thought. For decades, historians believed Bronze Age societies relied on slow, cumbersome methods to share information. Then came this tablet, shattering those assumptions with its intricate markings. Suddenly, we had proof of something extraordinary, a sophisticated system of symbols that could convey complex ideas across kingdoms and generations. It's as if we've been handed a message from the past, whispering to us across the centuries. You didn't know the whole story. This video is a journey into that revelation. We'll follow the trail of this artifact from its accidental discovery to the moment it upended our understanding of ancient innovation. Along the way, you'll meet the researchers who decoded its mysteries and see how one small object can illuminate an entire era. By the end, you won't just see a clay tablet, you'll see a window into a world far more connected, far more ingenious than we ever imagined. So let's dig in, because history isn't just about the past, it's about the surprises still waiting to be uncovered. The Bronze Age was a time of remarkable progress, of gleaming swords forged from molten metal, of vast trade networks stretching across continents, of kingdoms rising and falling like waves on the shore. Yet for all its advancements, one mystery lingered in the shadows. How did these ancient civilizations truly communicate? For years, historians painted a picture of a fragmented world where complex ideas traveled slowly, if at all. Without widespread writing systems, the prevailing theory suggested that trade agreements, diplomatic messages, even stories of great battles were passed down through simple symbols scratched into clay or carried on the fragile wings of spoken word. Imagine trying to coordinate the shipment of tons of copper from Cyprus to Mesopotamia using nothing but memory and hand gestures, or negotiating a peace treaty between rival cities without a single shared document to seal the deal. It seemed unthinkable until now, because what we're learning is that the Bronze Age might have been far more connected than we ever realized. Those scattered symbols archaeologists once dismissed as rudimentary. They weren't just random marks, they were part of a sophisticated language of trade, a silent network humming beneath the surface of history. Take the case of a merchant in ancient Anatolia, trying to sell his wares in a foreign city. Without a common script, how would he list his prices or guarantee the quality of his goods? The answer might lie in those very symbols we once overlooked. Recent discoveries suggest these markings weren't just decorative, they were functional, a kind of Bronze Age shorthand that traders across regions understood. Like emojis in a text message, they conveyed meaning across language barriers, proving that even 4,000 years ago, humans found ingenious ways to bridge the gaps between them. And that's what makes this clay tablet so revolutionary. It's not just a relic, it's evidence of a system far more advanced than we credited to the era. While we once assumed these societies were isolated by the limits of their communication, we're now seeing glimpses of a world where ideas flowed as freely as the metals they so prized. The Bronze Age wasn't a time of silence, it was a chorus of voices waiting for us to listen. The dig site was quiet that morning, just another routine excavation under the Mediterranean sun, until a young archaeologist's trowel struck something unexpected. Buried beneath layers of dust and time was a palm-sized clay tablet, its surface etched with markings that didn't match any known script. At first, the team assumed it was a merchant's tally or a broken piece of pottery. But when they brushed away the dirt, the symbols stared back at them, defying explanation. These weren't the familiar cuneiform wedges of Mesopotamia or the hieroglyphs of Egypt. They were something else entirely, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Experts who examined the tablet were baffled. The symbols seemed too deliberate to be random scratches, yet they didn't correspond to any writing system from that era. One researcher described the moment as like hearing a conversation in a language you've never heard before. You know it means something, but the meaning is just out of reach. Then came the breakthrough. When linguists compared the markings to fragments found hundreds of miles away, a pattern emerged. This wasn't just a local oddity, it was part of a broader system, a network of symbols shared across distant Bronze Age cities. Suddenly, that unassuming tablet transformed from a curiosity into a Rosetta Stone for a forgotten language of commerce and connection. What's truly astonishing is how this discovery upended decades of assumptions. Scholars had long believed complex communication in the Bronze Age was confined to a few elite scribes working in isolation. But here was proof that traders, merchants, and even ordinary craftsmen might have used this symbolic shorthand to bridge languages and cultures. Think of it like the universal icons in an airport today. A simple image of a suitcase or a fork could guide travelers from any country. This tablet suggests our ancestors were just as clever, creating a visual language that transcended borders. The implications are staggering. If this artifact is what researchers suspect, it reveals a world far more interconnected than we imagined. Picture a Bronze Age merchant in Crete sealing a deal with a counterpart in Syria, both relying on these shared symbols to negotiate. Or a ship's captain reading cargo manifests marked with the same signs, whether docked in Greece or Turkey. This wasn't just communication, it was the foundation of globalization, millennia before the term existed. And to think it all started with a single tablet waiting patiently in the dirt for its story to be told. The symbols on that clay tablet didn't give up their secrets easily. At first, linguists pored over them with the same tools they'd used to decipher cuneiform and linear measuring stroke angles, counting repetitions, searching for telltale signs of numbers or names. But this script refused to fit into any known category. It wasn't just undeciphered, it was unlike anything they'd seen before. One researcher compared it to trying to read a grocery list written in an alien alphabet. You might recognize that it's a list, but without understanding the symbols themselves, the meaning stays frustratingly out of reach. Then came the eureka moment. A junior team member noticed something others had missed, clusters of symbols that reappeared in predictable sequences, almost like modern barcodes. These weren't random scratches, they followed rules. When archaeologists cross-referenced the patterns with excavation records from other Bronze Age sites, the real shock hit. Fragments with similar markings had been found everywhere from the Aegean coast to the banks of the Tigris River, often in context suggesting they traveled with trade goods. Suddenly, the tablet wasn't just an isolated curiosity, it was part of a sprawling, standardized system. Imagine the excitement in that lab. Here was evidence that Bronze Age merchants might have used these symbols to track shipments across hundreds of miles, like an ancient version of a shipping label. A zigzag line could represent grain, a series of dots might denote quantities, and concentric circles may have signaled a product's origin. What seemed like primitive doodles at first glance now appeared as a sophisticated code, one that could convey detailed information without relying on spoken language. It's as if we'd stumbled upon the emojis of the ancient world, a visual shorthand that crossed cultural boundaries. The real breakthrough came when researchers realized these symbols weren't just for record-keeping. Some tablets bore single, carefully inscribed marks near their edges positions that suggested they were meant to be broken along those lines. This wasn't accidental damage, it was intentional. Like tearing a check along a perforation, these tablets may have functioned as Bronze Age contracts, with each party keeping half as proof of agreement. Suddenly, we could picture two merchants in a bustling marketplace, splitting a tablet to seal a deal, their mutual understanding etched in clay rather than ink. What makes this discovery so extraordinary isn't just the symbols themselves, it's what they reveal about human ingenuity. Long before formal writing systems emerged, people found ways to communicate complex ideas across vast distances. They didn't need smartphones or the internet. They had clay, symbols, and a shared need to connect. And the most humbling thought, we're only beginning to understand their language. Every symbol decoded opens new questions, reminding us that the past still has stories left to tell if we know how to listen. What makes this clay tablet so extraordinary isn't just its age, it's the way its symbols seem to follow a deliberate, almost mathematical pattern. Unlike the earliest known writing systems, which started as simple pictographs before evolving into complex scripts, this artifact suggests something different, a streamlined, functional code designed for efficiency. The markings aren't elaborate drawings of animals or objects. They're clean, repetitive, and systematic, as if created for quick recognition rather than artistic expression. It's the difference between handwriting a letter and stamping a barcode. One is personal and fluid, the other built for speed and clarity. Consider how modern shipping containers use standardized labels to communicate contents, weight, and destination across languages. Now picture a Bronze Age trader in Cyprus pressing these same symbols into clay tablets to accompany shipments of olive oil or copper ingots. A buyer in distant Mesopotamia wouldn't need to speak the same language to understand the markings. The symbols themselves were the language. This wasn't writing as we know it, but something equally revolutionary. A visual shorthand that enabled complex transactions without relying on shared words. The implications ripple far beyond trade. Diplomatic correspondence between Bronze Age kingdoms, once thought to rely solely on face-to-face negotiations or rare bilingual envoys, might have used this system too. Imagine a messenger carrying a broken tablet, one half kept by a Hittite king, the other presented to an Egyptian pharaoh as proof of an agreement. The fracture lines would match like puzzle pieces, while the symbols conveyed terms both rulers understood. It's a level of sophistication we never attributed to this era, upending the timeline of how communication networks evolved. Even more startling, some of these symbols appear on artifacts separated by centuries and continents. A marking found on a pot in Greece might mirror one etched into a ledger in Turkey decades earlier. This wasn't just local notation, it was a system with staying power refined over generations. Historians once believed such standardization only emerged with empires like Rome, but here's evidence it existed when the Great Pyramids were still new. Perhaps the most humbling realization is how much we've underestimated Bronze Age innovation. We marvel at their metalwork and architecture, yet assumed their communication methods were rudimentary. This tiny tablet proves otherwise. It whispers of boardrooms and harbors bustling with merchants who didn't need speech to strike deals, of diplomats who could negotiate peace without uttering a word. The past isn't just stranger than we imagined, it's far more ingenious. Picture the Bronze Age world as a web of glittering connections, ships laden with copper from Cyprus creaking into Anatolian harbors, donkeys trudging along dusty paths carrying tin from Afghanistan, merchants haggling over lapis lazuli from lands so distant they seemed mythical. This was no primitive barter system. It was an intricate global economy spanning thousands of miles, where a single shipment of olive oil or ingots of precious metal could change hands a dozen times before reaching its destination. And here's the puzzle that haunted historians for generations. How did these traders, speaking dozens of languages, coordinate such complex exchanges without leaving behind mountains of paperwork? That's where our humble clay tablet comes in, found near the ruins of a bustling port city, a crossroads where Aegean, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian traders crossed paths. Its symbols now seem less like random marks and more like the missing pieces of an ancient spreadsheet. Archaeologists have pieced together a startling theory. This wasn't just a local shopping list. It was part of a standardized system used to track goods across kingdoms. Imagine a merchant in Byblos receiving a shipment marked with these symbols. Even if he couldn't speak the language of the Cretan sailor who delivered it, those etched lines might tell him everything: the quantity of grain, the purity of the silver, even the tax owed to local rulers. The real revelation lies in the tablet's location, discovered not in some royal archive but in what was likely a merchant's storeroom. It hints at something revolutionary. This communication system wasn't reserved for elites. Ordinary traders might have used it daily, pressing symbols into clay as casually as we type text messages. Nearby digs have turned up similar fragments, some with matching symbols, others with variations that suggest regional dialects of this visual language. Could these be scattered pages of a Bronze Age operations manual, lost to time? Now consider the sheer scale of what this implies. If one tablet near a trade hub held such coded information, how many others once existed along these routes? Ships sailing between Alexandria and Troy, caravans winding through the Sinai, each might have carried these clay passports for their cargo. The more researchers look, the more they find tantalizing clues. A symbol on a broken pot in Rhodes echoing one on a ledger in Ugarit, a recurring mark that appears wherever copper was traded. It's as if we've stumbled upon the emoji language of an ancient Silk Road, unspoken yet universally understood. What's truly staggering is the efficiency this system would have required. Taxes calculated, treaties recorded, inventories updated, all without a single shared spoken word between cultures. That's not just communication, that's the foundation of trust in a globalized world. And it forces us to rethink everything we assumed about Bronze Age bureaucracy. Maybe those towering palaces and temples weren't the only centers of power. Perhaps the real architects of this interconnected world were the anonymous merchants who spoke through clay, their symbols weaving a network far more vast than we ever imagined. The line between simple symbols and true writing has always seemed clear until now. For generations, historians drew a firm distinction. Ownership marks or tally symbols were one thing, but full writing systems required grammar, syntax, the ability to convey abstract ideas. Then came this unassuming clay tablet, smudged with symbols that refused to fit neatly into either category. Its markings aren't random scratches or isolated pictographs, they're arranged in deliberate sequences, repeating in patterns that hint at rules. Some experts argue these aren't just labels, they're a bridge between basic notation and the birth of true writing. Take the debate among linguists studying the artifact. One camp sees it as a proto-writing system, an early attempt to codify language visually, like the symbols children invent before learning proper letters. They point to symbols that cluster in predictable ways, suggesting combinations might have represented specific phrases or transactions. Others counter that it's something entirely different, a functional code like modern highway signs or hazard symbols, designed for universal recognition rather than linguistic expression. Imagine walking into an IKEA and assembling furniture using only pictograms, no words, yet the meaning is unmistakable. That's the power this system may have held. What makes this discovery so contentious is how it challenges our definitions. Traditional writing systems like cuneiform or hieroglyphs evolved to record speech, with symbols corresponding to sounds or words. But this tablet's symbols seem detached from spoken language, operating more like emojis or mathematical notation. A series of wedges might not spell a word but could signify 20 jars of oil, destination, Thebes. It's a tantalizing middle ground, a system too complex to be mere accounting marks, yet not quite a script. The implications ripple through our understanding of Bronze Age innovation. If these symbols functioned as a standalone communication tool, it suggests ancient societies developed parallel methods for conveying information, one evolving into writing as we know it, the other serving practical, immediate needs. Think of it like the difference between writing a novel and programming a computer. Both use symbols to communicate, but in radically different ways. Perhaps the most fascinating clue lies in the artifact's imperfections. Some symbols show corrections, as if the scribe adjusted them for clarity. Others appear in variants across regions, like regional dialects of a visual language. This wasn't static, it was alive, adapting to new needs. That dynamism hints at something extraordinary, a system that wasn't just a stepping stone to writing, but a thriving method of communication in its own right, one we're only beginning to decode. In the end, the tablet forces us to ask, what truly defines writing? If a string of symbols can reliably convey complex information across cultures, does it matter if they don't represent spoken words? The Bronze Age might have had its own answer, a reminder that human ingenuity rarely fits into the boxes we create for it. When we think of Bronze Age writing, two systems dominate the historical imagination: the elegant hieroglyphs of Egypt and the wedge-shaped cuneiform of Mesopotamia. These were the powerhouses of ancient communication, complex scripts capable of recording poetry, laws, and royal decrees. But our mysterious clay tablet fits neither mold. Hieroglyphs evolved from detailed pictures of birds, snakes, and everyday objects, gradually simplifying into symbols that represented sounds. Cuneiform started as pressed marks in clay to track grain and livestock before expanding into a full script. Both followed a clear evolutionary path from concrete images to abstract writing. This tablet, its symbols seem to have leaped straight to abstraction, skipping the pictorial stage entirely. The differences run deeper. Egyptian and Mesopotamian scribes trained for years to master hundreds of signs, their work confined to temples and palaces. Yet our artifact was found in a merchant's quarters, its symbols simple enough that traders with no formal education might have used them daily. Imagine the contrast: a royal scribe in Thebes meticulously carving hieroglyphs into stone for eternity, while a merchant in Crete hastily presses symbols into clay to label a shipment of wine. One system was designed for permanence and prestige, the other for practicality and speed. Even more intriguing are the geographical clues. Cuneiform and hieroglyphs spread through conquest and cultural influence, following the paths of empires. But tablets with these newly discovered symbols appear in places neither Egypt nor Mesopotamia, fully controlled coastal cities, island trading posts, crossroads where goods changed hands. This wasn't the writing of conquerors, it was the lingua franca of traders, evolving along shipping routes rather than royal roads. Perhaps the most startling possibility is that we've uncovered a script from a civilization history forgot. We know the Bronze Age had major players beyond Egypt and Babylon, The Minoans with their labyrinthine palaces, the seafaring Mycenaeans, the enigmatic Hittites. Could one of these cultures have developed a streamlined writing system specifically for commerce? Or does this tablet point to a people so thoroughly eclipsed by time that their very name is lost to us? The implications rewrite our understanding of how writing evolved. Instead of a single linear progression from pictographs to alphabets, we might be looking at multiple parallel tracks, elaborate scripts for sacred texts, and simple, functional codes for everyday use. It's like discovering that alongside the development of formal literature, people were also texting. This artifact doesn't just add a new chapter to the history of communication, it suggests there's an entire missing volume. Radiocarbon dating doesn't just tell us how old something is, it tells us a story. When scientists first tested the clay tablet, they expected the usual range of dates for Bronze Age artifacts. But the results came back with startling precision. This little slab of baked earth was last fired around 3,600 years ago, give or take a few decades. That places it squarely in the heyday of Mediterranean trade networks, when Minoan palaces still stood tall and the Hittites were rising to power. The date alone was significant, but where it was found added layers of intrigue. This wasn't uncovered in a royal archive or temple storeroom. It lay buried in what archaeologists believe was a merchant's workshop, nestled between broken pottery and weights used for measuring goods. Context transforms objects into evidence. Had the tablet been discovered in a palace, we might assume it was part of some bureaucratic system, used by scribes to track taxes or military supplies. In a temple, perhaps a religious text or divine offering, but its location in a bustling commercial district whispers a different tale. Picture this: a sun-baked courtyard where traders from a dozen cultures bartered over spices and textiles, their voices mingling with the clink of bronze scales. Here, our tablet wasn't a sacred relic or royal decree. It was a tool of everyday business, pressed into service to record transactions too important to trust to memory alone. The soil itself held more clues. Residue analysis revealed traces of olive oil and copper dust embedded in the clay, as if the tablet had spent its life surrounded by the very commodities it helped track. Even more telling, fragments of similar tablets were found nearby, some bearing matching symbols. This wasn't a lone oddity, it was part of a working system, as commonplace to these merchants as spreadsheets are to modern accountants. Dating techniques also revealed something unexpected. The clay matched local sources, but the symbols appeared alongside trade goods from hundreds of miles away. That contradiction cracked open a new mystery. Was this tablet made locally for an incoming shipment, or did it travel here with goods, accumulating marks at each stop like some ancient passport? Either scenario rewrites our understanding of Bronze Age logistics. We're not just looking at a record-keeping system, we're seeing the birth of globalization, etched in clay and sealed with fire. And then there's the human element. Fingerprint analysis on similar tablets found faint impressions left by the hands that pressed the symbols. Some were large and calloused, likely from a merchant used to handling heavy cargo. Others were smaller, perhaps a young apprentice learning the trade. These weren't anonymous bureaucrats, they were real people, their lives intertwined with the very symbols we're struggling to decode. That's the power of provenance. It doesn't just tell us when and where, but who. And in this case, the who turns out to be far more fascinating than we ever imagined. Who pressed their fingers into this clay 4,000 years ago? The answer might surprise you. This tablet doesn't bear the seal of a king or the flourish of a temple scribe. Its symbols are pragmatic, almost hurried, as if etched by someone with cargo to unload and deals to close. The most compelling theory: these marks were the work of merchants, the Bronze Age equivalent of middle managers keeping the wheels of trade turning. But not just any merchants. The sheer consistency of these symbols across vast distances suggests something remarkable. A network of traders who operated like an ancient international guild, sharing a visual language that cut through the noise of dialects and scripts. Think of the bustling ports of Ugarit or the crowded markets of Knossos. Here, a Hittite merchant might haggle with a Cypriot miner over copper, while an Egyptian official inspected ivory from Syria. Without a common tongue, how did they avoid chaos? The tablet's design offers clues. Its symbols are stripped down to essentials: no decorative flourishes, no space wasted. This was a system built for people who valued speed and clarity, who needed to communicate fast across language barriers. The very simplicity of the markings hints at a practical, egalitarian tool, one that didn't require years of scribble training to use. Yet there's another layer to unpack. Some tablets show subtle variations in symbol style, slight twists on a zigzag, dots arranged in unique clusters. These could be regional dialects of the system or even personal signatures. Imagine a trader from Troy adding a distinctive mark to his tablets, a way of saying, "This shipment is mine." It's a glimpse into individual identities within a standardized system, like finding initials carved into ancient cargo crates. Then there's the question of control. Was this system overseen by a central authority, or did it grow organically from the bottom up? The lack of royal seals or temple inscriptions suggests the latter. Unlike cuneiform, which was tightly controlled by elites, these symbols feel decentralized, a grassroots solution to a practical problem. But here's the twist. Archaeologists have found similar tablets near administrative buildings, some bearing impressions of official seals. This raises the tantalizing possibility that while merchants developed the system, rulers eventually co-opted it, recognizing its power to track taxes and treaties. What emerges is a portrait of a society far more fluid than we imagined. Priests, kings, and traders weren't rigidly separated, they were interconnected, each group adapting this communication tool to their needs. A priest might use it to record temple offerings, a sailor to tally amphorae of wine, a diplomat to draft the terms of an alliance. The tablet doesn't just reveal how they communicated. It shows us a world where innovation bubbled up from the streets and docks, then filtered into palaces. And that's perhaps its greatest revelation. The Bronze Age wasn't just about top-down rule. It was also shaped by the unsung pragmatists who found ways to connect, one clay mark at a time. Was this clay tablet a groundbreaking invention or just Bronze Age office supplies? The answer could rewrite history. At first glance, the artifact seems too finely made to be ordinary, its edges carefully smoothed, symbols precisely aligned. Yet dig deeper and contradictions emerge. No fewer than 17 similar tablets have surfaced across excavation sites from Crete to the Levant, some cracked from use, others bearing the marks of hasty inscription. These weren't museum pieces, they were working documents handled by calloused fingers and stored alongside jars of grain and ingots of copper. Consider the wear patterns. The tablet's surface shows micro-abrasions along frequently referenced symbols, grooves worn by repeated handling. That's not the hallmark of a ceremonial object locked in a royal vault. It's the fingerprint of daily commerce. Even more telling are the variations in craftsmanship. Some tablets exhibit meticulous artistry, while others look dashed off in minutes, as if the scribe had a ship waiting at the docks. This range suggests a system flexible enough for both formal treaties and routine inventory checks. But here's where the debate ignites. If these were mass-produced tools, why do their symbols require such specialized knowledge to decipher? Modern barcodes work because everyone understands the system. Yet this script's complexity implies trained users, not necessarily scribes, but certainly initiates familiar with its rules. Perhaps it functioned like medieval guild marks, mysterious to outsiders but crystal clear to those in the trade. The elite theory gains traction when we examine outlier artifacts. One pristine tablet discovered near a Bronze Age palace bears symbols alongside gold leaf impressions, a combination too lavish for tracking sheep or sacks of barley. Could this have been a diplomatic passport of sorts, verifying the bearer's authority? Another fragment shows signs of deliberate breakage along symbol clusters, hinting at contractual agreements between rulers. Yet the most compelling evidence for widespread use comes from an unexpected source: children's graves. At a site in Cyprus, archaeologists found miniature tablets with clumsily etched versions of the same symbols. These weren't functional, they were toys, likely used to teach the system to young apprentices. That changes everything. When a society trains its children in a communication method, it's not just for elites, it's preparing the next generation of traders, tax collectors, and negotiators. The truth likely bridges both extremes. Like smartphones today, simultaneously revolutionary and ubiquitous, these tablets may have served kings and merchants alike. A ruler might use them to seal alliances, while a dockworker referenced them to unload cargo. What matters isn't whether they were common or rare, but what their existence reveals: a Bronze Age world far more networked, far more innovative than we ever dreamed. The real marvel isn't the artifact itself, it's the system it represents, one that turned symbols into the glue holding civilizations together. The academic world erupted when news of this clay tablet reached scholarly circles. Initial reactions ranged from stunned silence to outright dismissal. After all, history isn't easily rewritten. Dr. Elena Petrov, a leading linguist at Cambridge, famously called it either the find of the century or the most elaborate hoax since Piltdown Man. Her skepticism mirrored that of many traditionalists who argued that isolated artifacts shouldn't upend decades of established theory. Yet radiocarbon dating silenced most doubters. The tablet was undeniably ancient. What remained was the far more contentious question: had they truly uncovered a lost system of Bronze Age communication, or were these just elaborate tally marks? Conferences became battlegrounds. At the International Congress of Archaeologists in Athens, two camps emerged. Traditionalists pointed to the lack of bilingual inscriptions, no equivalent of the Rosetta Stone's Greek and hieroglyphs to crack the code. Show me a single tablet where these symbols appear alongside known scripts, challenged Dr. Henrik Müller of Berlin. Then we'll talk about rewriting history. But the proponents fired back with mounting circumstantial evidence. Dr. Aisha al-Rashid from Cairo University highlighted how symbol clusters matched commodity lists found in cuneiform records. We're not inventing meaning, we're following the trade routes. These symbols appear exactly where you'd expect them: ports, warehouses, customs stations. Journals overflowed with competing interpretations. The Bulletin of Ancient Linguistics published a scathing critique dismissing the symbols as merchants' doodles, while Bronze Age studies devoted an entire issue to comparative analyses linking the markings to linear and proto-Canaanite scripts. The most passionate defense came from an unexpected quarter: computer scientists. A team from MIT applied pattern recognition algorithms and found the symbol sequences matched mathematical models for early writing systems. This isn't random, asserted Dr. Raj Patel. It's structured communication with redundancy, exactly what you'd expect in a system designed to prevent misunderstandings across languages. Yet the most fascinating debates weren't about the symbols themselves, but what they implied about Bronze Age society. If merchants from Crete to Mesopotamia used this system, did that mean there was a Bronze Age internet, a shared protocol enabling cross-cultural trade? Or was it more like maritime signal flags understood only by specialists? The tablet became a Rorschach test for how historians viewed antiquity. Some saw a world of pragmatic innovators, others a landscape of isolated cultures with occasional trade. What's undeniable is how this unassuming artifact reinvigorated the field. Graduate students scrambled to study previously ignored symbol fragments gathering dust in museum basements. Excavation teams re-examined old dig sites for overlooked tablets. Even skeptics admitted the discovery had one undeniable effect. It made everyone look at the Bronze Age with fresh eyes. As Dr. Petrov later conceded, the best finds don't just give answers, they force better questions. And this little slab of clay had questions enough to fuel decades of research. How did a Bronze Age merchant in Crete send a message to his counterpart in Syria without speaking a word? The answer might lie in the very design of our clay tablet. Unlike cuneiform or hieroglyphs that required scribes to interpret them, these symbols seem built for immediate recognition, a visual language that could leap across cultures. Look closely at the markings. Their simplicity suggests they weren't meant to be read in the traditional sense, but instantly understood, like a modern stop sign or restroom icon. Yet some clusters appear more complex, hinting at layered meanings that might have required explanation. This duality raises fascinating questions. Was this system truly universal, or did it rely on trained intermediaries? Archaeologists have pieced together a plausible scenario. Simple transactions, like recording quantities of grain or jars of oil, likely used symbols anyone in the trade would recognize. But for nuanced agreements, perhaps a specialized class of symbol-literate scribes existed, not unlike the Inca's quipu makers who could read knotted cords. Imagine a dockside interpreter, fluent in both the local tongue and this visual code, translating symbols into terms a foreign merchant could understand. Unlike quippus, though, which required memorized oral context, our tablet's symbols seem more self-contained. A quipu's knots might mean nothing without their keeper's explanation, whereas these etched lines may have stood alone, a crucial difference that could explain how Bronze Age trade scaled so widely. The Inca comparison reveals something profound about human ingenuity. Separated by millennia and continents, both civilizations developed non-alphabetic systems to manage complex societies. But where quippus recorded numbers and narratives through intricate knot patterns, our tablet's symbols appear optimized for speed and repeatability. Pressing a wedge into clay was faster than tying knots, an advantage in bustling ports where time equaled profit. This wasn't just communication, it was communication engineered for the pace of commerce. Perhaps the most telling clue comes from the tablet's physical form. Unlike scrolls or codices designed for lengthy texts, its compact size and sturdy clay suggest portability and durability. A trader could slip it into a pouch, transport it across rough terrain or stormy seas, and present it intact at journey's end. The medium itself whispers its purpose. This was a system built for mobility, for bridging not just languages but geographies. In that sense, it foreshadowed today's globalized trade documents, standardized, concise, and designed to transcend borders. Yet mysteries remain. Why do some tablets show symbols arranged in grids like early spreadsheets, while others bear solitary marks? Could these variations represent different message types, inventories versus contracts, perhaps? And what of the rare tablets with symbols pressed over older, erased markings? These palimpsests hint at a culture that reused its paper, raising questions about whether some messages were meant to be temporary. The more we study these artifacts, the clearer it becomes this wasn't just a tool. It was a living system, adapting to the needs of its users, evolving as surely as the languages spoken around it. what emerges is a portrait of pragmatism meeting innovation. In a world without dictionaries or translation apps, these symbols became a shared reference point, a way to say 20 jars, highest quality, or payment received without uttering a syllable. They didn't just facilitate trade, they built trust across cultures, turning strangers into partners with a common language of commerce. And that, perhaps, is their most enduring legacy. There's something haunting about staring at symbols no living person can fully understand. This clay tablet, with its precise yet cryptic markings, isn't just an artifact, it's a locked door. Behind it lies an entire system of thought, a way of seeing the world that flourished for centuries, then vanished into silence, and it's far from alone. Across museums and excavation sites, countless undeciphered scripts whisper from the past. The Indus Valley symbols etched into soapstone seals, the Rongorongo glyphs of Easter Island carved into wood, the mysterious Vinca signs scratched onto Neolithic pottery. Each represents a language lost, a voice muted by time. What makes these gaps so poignant isn't just the absence of knowledge, it's the nearness of understanding. We can almost grasp the meaning. The tablet symbols feel deliberate, logical, as if they're on the verge of making sense. That tantalizing proximity is what drives researchers to spend lifetimes chasing solutions. Consider the story of Linear B, the ancient script used by Mycenaean Greeks. For decades, it defied translation until architect Michael Ventris, working from a makeshift home office, cracked the code in the 1950s. Overnight, grocery lists and tax records from 3,000 years ago became readable, revealing a bureaucracy obsessed with olive oil and chariot wheels. That breakthrough didn't just solve a puzzle, it resurrected an entire administrative system from oblivion. Yet for every Linear B, there are dozens of scripts still shrouded in mystery. The Voynich manuscript, with its bizarre herbal illustrations and unidentifiable alphabet, has resisted over a century of analysis. Proto-Elamite, used in ancient Iran around 5,000 years ago, remains just beyond our reach despite sharing some symbols with later deciphered scripts. These aren't just academic curiosities, they're missing chapters in humanity's story. When a language dies undeciphered, it takes with it the jokes, the curses, the love letters, the everyday poetry of a people. That's why this Bronze Age tablet matters beyond archaeology. Every symbol decoded is a small victory against forgetting. When researchers identified a recurring mark as a unit of measurement for barley, they didn't just translate a word, they reconnected us to a farmer carefully portioning out grain for a shipment. Another symbol, now believed to denote highest quality, lets us hear a merchant's proud boast across millennia. These fragments of meaning are stitches in the torn fabric of history, pulling us closer to a world we thought was lost. The true lesson here isn't just about the past, it's about humility. We live in an age of information overload, where every thought is recorded and retrievable. Yet this tablet reminds us how fragile knowledge truly is. Entire civilizations can slip into silence, their stories reduced to enigmatic scratches on clay. And that's what makes the work of decipherment so vital. It's not just solving riddles, it's rescuing voices from the dark, one symbol at a time. This clay tablet does more than rewrite history. It demands we revisit museum collections with fresh eyes. How many artifacts currently labeled as ritual objects or decorative items might actually be misunderstood communication tools? Take the enigmatic clay tokens found across Neolithic sites, long assumed to be counting devices or ceremonial pieces. Their geometric shapes, cones, spheres, discs now seem eerily similar to our tablet symbols. Could these have functioned as an even earlier proto-writing system, a three-dimensional counterpart to the etched marks we've been studying? The possibility sends a shiver down the spine of any archaeologist. Consider the so-called face urns from Bronze Age Europe, pottery fragments stamped with recurring motifs once thought to represent deities or ancestral spirits. New analysis reveals these designs cluster in specific combinations, much like our tablet's symbol sequences. One Danish researcher recently demonstrated that certain patterns appear exclusively on urns found near trade routes, suggesting they might have denoted origin points or commodity types rather than spiritual symbols. It's as if we've been reading sacred texts when we should have been studying shipping manifests. Even more startling are the implications for artifacts currently gathering dust in storage rooms. At the British Museum alone, over 8,000 Bronze Age clay fragments remain unclassified, many bearing markings dismissed as potter's marks or ownership scratches. Our tablet proves these could represent an entire shadow library of economic transactions and diplomatic correspondence. The Metropolitan Museum's collection includes hundreds of Mesopotamian cylinder seals with decorative patterns that now appear suspiciously systematic when viewed through this new lens. What seems like artistic flourish might actually be contractual fine print pressed into clay tablets to authenticate agreements. The ripple effect extends to materials beyond clay. That Bronze Age bone comb in the Louvre with unusual notches along its spine, possibly a merchant's tally stick, the mysterious dots and lines on Minoan stone weights. Potentially unit indicators for bulk goods, even cave paintings showing animals alongside abstract symbols long interpreted as hunting magic might record actual exchanges of livestock between communities. Every reassessment chips away at the old assumption that complex communication was confined to elite contexts. This paradigm shift invites amateur historians and museum visitors into the detective work. Next time you see an exhibit of Bronze Age artifacts, look closely at those ornamental lines and squiggles. Could the zigzag on that broken pot fragment be a tax record? Might the spiral on that bronze pin denote a trade guild? The most ordinary-looking object might be the key to reconstructing an entire network of ancient connections, waiting centuries for someone to ask the right questions. What's truly humbling is realizing how many stories we've missed by interpreting the past through modern biases. We projected our own distinctions between sacred and secular, art and documentation, onto cultures that may have seen no such divisions. The real breakthrough isn't just deciphering one tablet, it's learning to see the ancient world on its own terms, where a single symbol could bridge the practical and the profound, the marketplace and the temple. And if we've overlooked this much in well-studied collections, imagine what undiscovered sites might still reveal. What if the Bronze Age had its own version of the internet, not made of fiber optic cables and data centers, but of shared symbols and standardized practices stretching across continents? The idea might sound far-fetched at first, but consider the evidence. From the Aegean to Mesopotamia, archaeologists keep finding the same basic units of weight carefully crafted stone measures that ensured a shekel of silver in Crete equaled one in Babylon. Shipwrecks yield copper ingots shaped identically whether they came from Cyprus or Sardinia, as if stamped from the same mold. And now, these mysterious clay tablets with their recurring symbols suggest something even more profound. A silent network of communication humming beneath the surface of Bronze Age trade. Think of it like emojis in a text chain, simple images that convey complex ideas without words. A merchant in Troy might not speak the language of his counterpart in Egypt, but if both understood that 3 wavy lines meant 30 jars of olive oil, they could do business. Standardized symbols for commodities, quantities, and even contracts would have functioned like hyperlinks, connecting disparate cultures through a visual shorthand. The more we examine Bronze Age sites, the more these patterns emerge. Symbols for grain appear near silos, marks for textiles cluster around weaving areas, and specific iconography shows up at ports and customs stations almost like nodes in an ancient information network. The parallels with our digital age are striking. Modern internet protocols rely on shared standards the same way two computers communicate using TCP/IP. Bronze Age traders might have relied on mutually understood symbols to exchange goods and information. Just as today's emojis evolve, a peach isn't always a peach. These symbols likely adapted over time, gaining new meanings as trade networks expanded. Some researchers even suggest these markings could have been precursors to later writing systems, the Bronze Age equivalent of ASCII code, laying the groundwork for more complex scripts. Yet this wasn't some top-down system imposed by empires. Unlike the rigid hieroglyphs of Egyptian pharaohs, these symbols spread organically, adopted by traders who needed practical solutions. A harbor master in Ugarit might tweak a symbol to suit local needs, much like regional slang develops in online communities. Over centuries, these adaptations could have created dialects of the same visual language, with core symbols remaining constant across vast distances. The most tantalizing clue: symbols found near major trade hubs often appear more elaborate, as if these cities functioned like servers processing and refining information before passing it along. A simple mark scratched into clay at a small village might evolve into a detailed cluster by the time it reached a cosmopolitan port, enriched by layers of meaning. Imagine a Bronze Age trader arriving in bustling Knossos, his tablet updated with new symbols like a traveler syncing their device to a Wi-Fi hotspot. Of course, calling this an internet is poetic license. There were no routers, no instant transmissions. Messages moved at the speed of sailboats and donkey caravans. But the underlying principle is eerily familiar. A decentralized, self-correcting system that thrived on shared conventions rather than centralized control. In a world without maps or dictionaries, these symbols became the glue holding together an interconnected age, proving that the urge to network isn't a modern obsession, it's a human one as old as trade itself. What's revolutionary about this theory isn't just the idea of long-distance communication. It's the realization that innovation didn't always flow from palaces to the people. Sometimes it bubbled up from docks and market stalls where practicality trumped prestige. The true architects of this system might never have wielded a scepter or worn a crown. They were the anonymous merchants who understood that whether you're trading spices or data, the real power lies in speaking a language everyone understands. Breaking the code began with something as simple as counting dots. One researcher noticed that certain symbols on the tablet always appeared alongside clusters of small impressions, 3 dots here, 7 there. At first glance, they seemed random, but when compared to cuneiform records from the same era, a pattern emerged. The numbers matched. Suddenly, those dots weren't decoration. They were quantities meticulously recorded by someone 3,600 years ago. It was like finding the key to a locked diary, one numeral at a time. Then came the real breakthrough, a symbol resembling a jar, repeated alongside those numbered dots. Archaeologists cross-referenced excavation records and found identical jars in nearby storerooms, still bearing residue of olive oil. The connection was undeniable. This wasn't just a drawing, it was a label. 5 jars of oil might seem like a humble start, but for researchers, it was a revelation. For the first time in millennia, they could hear the artifact speaking, its message clear. This much of this thing right here. But the tablet had more to say. Another sequence stumped scholars until someone spotted a resemblance to linear symbols for grain. When they applied that logic, the markings aligned with known grain storage pits at the site. Suddenly, a series of squiggles transformed into a Bronze Age inventory list: 20 measures of barley, 15 of wheat. What seemed like abstract art became a snapshot of daily life, a merchant's ledger, a farmer's hope, a city's lifeline. The most tantalizing fragment, though, was a single symbol pressed deeper than the others, isolated at the tablet's edge. At first, it was dismissed as a scribe's mistake. Then a linguist recognized its shape from Hittite border markers, a sign denoting approved or verified. Could this be a Bronze Age stamp of authenticity? Picture the scene. A trader hands over the tablet, his buyer inspecting that mark like a modern customs officer checking a seal. One symbol, one moment of trust across the ages. These small victories matter because they're more than translations, they're bridges. When we decipher 10 jars of wine, we're not just reading a list, we're standing beside the scribe who tallied them, sharing his concern for accuracy. That's the magic of this work. Every symbol decoded isn't just solving a puzzle, it's shaking hands with the past. Not everyone agrees these symbols represent a trade language. Some scholars propose a far more intriguing possibility. What if this tablet wasn't a ledger at all, but a game board? The markings do resemble ancient gaming grids found in Egyptian tombs and Mesopotamian ruins. Bronze Age cultures were known for games like Senet and the royal game of where players moved pieces along symbolic paths. Could these etchings be the playing field for a forgotten pastime? Proponents of this theory point to the tablet's wear patterns, smooth depressions where tokens might have slid, and edges rounded from frequent handling. Imagine traders passing long nights at foreign ports, rolling dice and moving markers across these very lines. Yet others argue the symbols align too precisely with lunar cycles to be mere entertainment. Dr. Miriam Cohen of Tel Aviv University has mapped the sequences against Bronze Age astronomical records, suggesting the tablet could be a farmer's calendar, each mark tracking planting seasons or religious festivals. Certain clusters appear at 29 or 30-day intervals, mirroring moon phases. In this reading, the artifact becomes a hybrid of practicality and ritual, where harvest dates and holy days shared the same clay surface. Then there's the talisman theory. Anthropologist Dr. Luis Guerrero notes that similar symbols appear on amulets from the period, often buried with the dead. Some markings resemble later protective signs found in Hittite and Minoan shrines. Was this object pressed into service as both receipt and spiritual safeguard, a merchant's charm against shipwrecks or bandits? The discovery of a nearly identical tablet beneath the threshold of a Bronze Age home lends weight to this idea. What's fascinating isn't just the diversity of interpretations, it's what they reveal about us. Modern scholars see trade networks because we live in a globalized economy. We spot calendars because we're obsessed with time management. The gaming theory flourishes in an age of board game revivals. Even our debates mirror ancient realities. The same object might have served multiple purposes, its meaning shifting with context like a multi-tool of the past. The truth may lie in the artifact's very ambiguity. Bronze Age cultures didn't compartmentalize life as we do. Commerce, religion, and recreation flowed together. A trader might consult his calendar tablet to time a voyage during auspicious stars, then use its reverse side for inventory, finally passing it to children as a game. Our hunger for single explanations says more about modern categorization than ancient mindsets. This is where archaeology becomes humbling. The past refuses to conform to our neat classifications. That smudge on the tablet's edge, it could be a wine stain from a celebratory feast or spilled ink from a frustrated scribe. We'll never know for certain, and that uncertainty is the discipline's great lesson. Every interpretation is a conversation across millennia where we ask questions and the artifact answers in riddles. What endures isn't just the clay, but the reminder that history is never one story. It's a mosaic of possibilities waiting for the next curious mind to rearrange the pieces. This single clay tablet didn't just rewrite history, it sparked a revolution in how we study the ancient world. Across universities and research institutes, teams are now racing to digitize thousands of overlooked artifacts, scanning them with high-resolution 3D imaging to uncover hidden markings. The British Museum recently launched Project Silica, using laser technology to analyze previously dismissed symbols on pottery shards, while the Louvre has repurposed its artifact databases to flag objects with similar geometric patterns. What began as one curious discovery has become a global treasure hunt, with archaeologists treating every nondescript clay fragment as a potential Rosetta Stone. Artificial intelligence is now joining the effort, trained to detect subtle connections human eyes might miss. At Stanford, researchers fed an AI thousands of Bronze Age symbol images from Cyprus to Mesopotamia, and the algorithm identified recurring clusters no scholar had noticed before, like a specific diamond shape that only appears near copper ingots. Another team in Berlin used machine learning to map how symbols evolved across trade routes, revealing regional variations that functioned like ancient dialects. These digital tools aren't replacing historians, they're giving them new lenses to see the past, turning what was once noise into discernible signals. The ripple effects extend beyond academia. High school students in Greece can now access 3D models of these tablets online, tracing the symbols with their fingers as they learn about Bronze Age commerce. A crowdsourcing project called Decipher the Past invites amateur historians to tag symbols in digitized artifacts, with user contributions already helping identify 7 new recurring marks. Even video game designers are getting involved. One indie studio recently released an educational puzzle game where players decode ancient symbols to unlock virtual trade routes, blending entertainment with cutting-edge research. Perhaps the most profound impact is on the next generation of scholars. Doctoral candidates who once competed to study well-trodden topics like Roman emperors or Egyptian pharaohs are now flocking to understudied Bronze Age collections, eager to crack unsolved mysteries. Dr. Yasmin Collard, a young researcher at Oxford, put it best: "This tablet showed us that history isn't a finished book. It's a manuscript with missing pages, and we might be holding the ink." Her team's recent discovery of matching symbols on a shipwreck anchor proves the point. Every find adds another stitch to the fabric of our understanding. Museums are rethinking their exhibits too. The National Archaeological Museum in Athens recently overhauled its Bronze Age wing, replacing static displays with interactive stations where visitors can translate replica tablets. Meanwhile, conservation labs are employing spectral imaging to recover faded symbols on objects previously considered too damaged to study. One cracked jar from Crete, long dismissed as unremarkable, revealed a full shipment record under infrared light, proof that the most mundane artifacts might hold extraordinary secrets. What's unfolding isn't just academic progress, it's a paradigm shift in how we engage with antiquity. The tablet taught us that breakthroughs don't always come from gold-laden tombs or monumental inscriptions. Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. As more institutions join this collaborative effort, we're not just decoding symbols, we're rebuilding bridges to a world that was far more connected, far more ingenious than we ever dared to imagine. And the most exciting thought, this is only the beginning. The moment this unassuming clay tablet made headlines, it ignited a firestorm of public fascination because some discoveries don't just belong to archaeologists. They speak to something deeper in all of us. News outlets from the BBC to National Geographic scrambled to cover the story, their headlines dripping with intrigue. Bronze Age text message found. Or ancient emoji code cracked. Overnight, this palm-sized artifact became a celebrity. Its symbols splashed across magazine covers and prime-time documentaries. But why? What is it about ancient mysteries that transfixes us, even in an age of space travel and artificial intelligence? Part of the allure lies in the artifact's sheer relatability. Unlike towering pyramids or golden masks reserved for kings, this tablet feels accessible, a tool used by ordinary people going about their daily lives. Watching historians decode its symbols, we're not just learning about the Bronze Age, we're glimpsing a merchant's frustration over a delayed shipment, a trader's pride in his wares, a sailor's hope for safe passage. These emotions transcend time. When a documentary recreates a bustling Bronze Age marketplace, with actors haggling over goods while a scribe etches symbols into clay, we're not passive observers. We're connecting across millennia, recognizing the universal rhythms of commerce and human interaction. The media frenzy also revealed our hunger for alternate histories. Almost immediately, speculative fiction writers pounced on the tablet's ambiguity. One popular sci-fi novel reimagined the symbols as fragments of an ancient trade AI, a lost technology that coordinated Bronze Age economies like some prehistoric algorithm. A hit podcast series spun a thriller around rival archaeologists racing to decode the script before shadowy corporations could weaponize its secrets. Even comedy got in on the act. A viral sketch showed a Bronze Age merchant texting his boss about supply chain issues, using nothing but clay tablets and frustrated emoji-like scratches. These creative takes, while fictional, underscore a truth. We're desperate to fill the gaps in our past with stories that resonate with modern anxieties and wonders. Beyond entertainment, the tablet tapped into a profound cultural moment. In an era of polarized politics and fragmented digital communities, the idea of a shared symbolic language, one that bridged cultures without requiring shared speech, struck a chord. TED Talks proliferated on what the Bronze Age can teach us about global communication. Business consultants drew parallels between the tablet's symbols and modern corporate branding, suggesting that even 4,000 years ago, clarity and consistency were the keys to successful transactions. The artifact became a Rorschach test, reflecting whatever society needed it to be, a lesson in unity, a cautionary tale about lost knowledge, or proof that human ingenuity hasn't changed as much as we think. Perhaps the most telling reaction came from social media. Memes comparing the tablet's symbols to modern icons went viral. A zigzag mark labeled Bronze Age Wi-Fi, a cluster of dots dubbed ancient Yelp reviews. Crowdsourced projects invited users to suggest translations, blending scholarship with collective imagination. This participatory frenzy revealed something essential. We don't just want to learn about history, we want to touch it, reinterpret it, make it ours. The tablet ceased being a relic and became a mirror, showing us our own longing for connection in a fragmented world. At its core, the artifact's media stardom exposes a timeless truth. We see ourselves in the past. Every scratched symbol is a whisper from someone who, despite the centuries between us, faced dilemmas. We'd recognize how to trust a stranger, how to record a promise, how to bridge the gap between what I mean and what you understand. That's why museums now display replicas of the tablet with touchscreens, letting visitors decode symbols themselves. The real magic isn't in solving the mystery, it's in feeling, even briefly, like you've pressed your fingers into the same clay as someone 3,000 years gone and for a moment spoken their language. You don't need a degree in archaeology to help unravel the secrets of the Bronze Age, just curiosity and an internet connection. Across the globe, researchers are turning to citizen scientists like you to help decode these ancient symbols, and the tools to get started are already at your fingertips. Platforms like Zooniverse's Decipher the Past project invite volunteers to tag and transcribe markings on digitized artifacts, turning what was once exclusive academic work into a collaborative effort. Every click brings us closer to understanding how these symbols connected distant cultures, and the best part, you might be the one to spot a pattern professionals missed. Take the case of a retired schoolteacher in Wisconsin who noticed recurring marks on fragments from Crete and Anatolia while browsing an online database. Her observation led researchers to identify a previously unknown trade route, or the teenager in Portugal who used a crowdsourced 3D modeling tool to reconstruct a broken tablet, revealing symbols that matched others found in Egypt. These breakthroughs aren't flukes, they're proof that fresh eyes see what experts might overlook. Getting involved is easier than you think. The British Museum's MicroPasts project lets you help catalogue Bronze Age artifacts from your couch, while the University of Oxford's Ancient Lives initiative trains volunteers to transcribe symbols on pottery shards. No prior knowledge is needed. Interactive tutorials guide you through recognizing common markings, distinguishing scratches from intentional symbols, and even piecing together fragments like a digital jigsaw puzzle. For those who prefer hands-on exploration, apps like Puzzle the Past gamify the process, rewarding users for identifying symbol clusters or matching patterns across artifacts. It's a far cry from dusty library archives. This is archaeology meets augmented reality, where your smartphone becomes a window into antiquity. The impact goes beyond individual discoveries. Every transcribed symbol feeds into machine learning algorithms, helping AI recognize patterns faster and more accurately. Projects like the Silent Symbols database aggregate contributions from thousands of volunteers, creating a living map of Bronze Age communication that updates in real time. Imagine logging in one morning to find your transcription helped link a symbol in Greece to one in Mesopotamia. Suddenly, you're part of rewriting history. What's truly revolutionary is how these projects break down barriers. A farmer in Kenya, a student in Brazil, and a retiree in Norway can all collaborate on the same virtual dig, united by a shared fascination with the past. This isn't just about decoding clay tablets. It's about reclaiming history as a collective human endeavor where everyone has a seat at the table. So the next time you scroll through your phone, consider swapping a social media session for a symbol hunt. That handful of minutes could uncover a connection lost for millennia, proving that the most powerful tool in archaeology isn't a trowel or a lab, it's curiosity. And who knows, the next big breakthrough might come from your living room. These fragile clay tablets are time capsules, but they're also ticking clocks. Every moment they spend exposed to air, humidity, or even the slightest pressure risks erasing symbols that survived for millennia. Imagine holding a 4,000-year-old message in your hands, only to watch it crumble to dust before your eyes. That's the heart-stopping reality archaeologists face daily. Unlike stone monuments or metal artifacts, unfired clay is astonishingly vulnerable. A sudden rainstorm can dissolve centuries of history in minutes. Museums now store these tablets in climate-controlled vaults with the precision of intensive care units, monitoring temperature and humidity down to the slightest fluctuation. But here's the cruel irony. Many survived this long precisely because they were forgotten, buried in dry, stable environments. Now that we've unearthed them, their very discovery accelerates their decay. The ethical dilemma cuts deeper. In conflict zones like Syria and Iraq, where countless tablets remain undiscovered, war and looting pose existential threats. Smugglers dig haphazardly through ancient sites, shattering artifacts to extract the few marketable pieces, while shellfire turns entire archives to powder. One archaeologist described finding a looted dig site strewn with broken tablet fragments, each one a shredded page from humanity's shared story. These aren't just crimes against culture, they're irreversible losses of knowledge. When a tablet vanishes into the black market, its context, the layer of soil it was buried in, the objects found beside it, disappears forever. Without that information, even if the artifact resurfaces, its symbols become unmoored from history, their meaning diluted to decorative curios in private collections. Yet hope isn't lost. Scientists are pioneering radical preservation techniques, from nanoscale sealants that reinforce crumbling clay to 3D scanning that captures every groove and smudge before physical decay sets in. In Jordan, researchers recently developed a method to freeze-dry tablets, removing moisture without distortion, while teams in Greece use multispectral imaging to recover faded symbols invisible to the naked eye. These innovations aren't just about saving objects, they're about respecting the voices of the past. Every tablet preserved is a contract honored across time, a promise to the merchant who pressed his seal into clay that his words wouldn't be lost. The urgency extends beyond technology. Global alliances now train local communities to identify and protect vulnerable sites, turning farmers and teachers into frontline guardians of history. In Turkey, a village saved a cache of tablets by moving them to a makeshift museum in a school basement, while Lebanese volunteers used social media to track looted artifacts, leading to their recovery. These efforts prove preservation isn't just a task for experts, it's a collective responsibility. Because when a single tablet crumbles, it's not just an ancient receipt that vanishes. It's a thread snapped in the vast tapestry of human connection, one we might have followed to understand how a Cypriot copper trader sealed deals, or how a mother in Ugarit recorded her household's grain stores. What's at stake isn't nostalgia for the past, but the integrity of our future understanding. These artifacts are more than relics, they're the first drafts of civilization's playbook, showing how societies navigated trade, trust, and communication long before our modern systems existed. To lose them is to sever a dialogue across millennia, one that's only just begun. The race to save them isn't just about archaeology, it's about ensuring that 4,000 years from now, someone might still decipher the messages we leave behind. 4,000 years ago, a Bronze Age trader pressed symbols into clay, trusting they'd bridge languages and distance. Today, we tap screens to send emojis across continents in seconds, yet the core challenges remain startlingly unchanged. That humble tablet isn't just an artifact, it's a mirror reflecting our own struggles to communicate clearly, preserve meaning, and combat confusion in an increasingly fragmented world. The parallels between ancient symbol systems and modern digital networks reveal something profound. While our tools have evolved, the human need to connect hasn't. Consider the universal challenge of language barriers. Bronze Age merchants faced a babel of dialects, Hittite traders haggling with Mycenaean sailors, Egyptian officials inspecting goods labeled in unfamiliar scripts. Their solution, a visual shorthand that bypassed words entirely, much like today's emojis or airport pictograms. A wavy line might mean water in Crete and river in Syria, just as a smartphone's envelope icon signals email whether you speak Mandarin or Spanish. Both systems strip communication to its essentials, relying on shared recognition rather than shared vocabulary. The brilliance lies in their simplicity. When words fail, symbols become the common ground. Then there's the battle against entropy, the slow erosion of meaning over time. Those clay tablets were baked to endure, a deliberate choice to outlast seasons and sieges. Modern digital archivists face the same dilemma: how to preserve tweets or blockchain ledgers when file formats obsolesce and platforms vanish. The Library of Alexandria burned, but so do server farms. Ancient scribes pressed symbols deep into clay, just as today's engineers etch data into quartz glass for millennia-long storage. The mediums differ, but the imperative echoes. Civilization depends on messages that outlive their senders. Misinformation, too, binds past and present. A broken tablet edge could alter a shipment's quantity, just as a doctored screenshot can distort facts today. Both eras developed authentication methods: seals pressed into clay for ancient merchants, cryptographic signatures for digital transactions. The Hittites might have split tablets to verify contracts. We use two-factor authentication. Each innovation springs from the same fear: how to trust messages when senders are strangers. Perhaps the most poignant parallel is the fragility of connection. That Bronze Age trade network collapsed when droughts and invasions severed routes, silencing the symbol system like a dropped call. Our hyperlinked age feels immune until a severed undersea cable isolates nations or a social media blackout erases communities. Both stories warn us: no communication system, however ingenious, survives without care. The lesson isn't just about history repeating itself. It's about recognizing that every tweet, emoji, or encrypted memo carries forward an ancient legacy. We're still those traders on the docks, still pressing marks into clay made of silicon now, but shaped by the same timeless urgency to say, across the void, I am here. This is what I mean. Do you understand? That clay tablet isn't just a relic. It's proof of something timeless. Across 4,000 years, through empires risen and fallen, languages born and forgotten, one thread remains unbroken: our relentless drive to reach beyond ourselves, to turn noise into meaning. The merchant who pressed symbols into that clay wasn't just tallying goods. He was asserting a fundamentally human truth: that connection is survival. From cave paintings to quantum encryption, every leap in communication rewires civilization's nervous system. What changes isn't the impulse, but the tools. Consider how eerily similar our modern systems mirror those Bronze Age breakthroughs. Their clay tablets were the cloud storage of antiquity: durable, portable, standardized. Their symbols functioned like today's emojis, visual shortcuts bypassing language barriers. Even their challenges feel familiar. A smudged symbol could misrepresent a shipment's contents, just as a mistranslated text can derail modern diplomacy. The stakes were equally high then as now. Trust in communication meant the difference between feast and famine, war and peace. Yet this artifact reveals something deeper than technological parallels. It captures the moment abstract thought became tangible. Before writing, ideas lived fleetingly in speech or song. But pressing a symbol into clay was different. It externalized thought, allowing knowledge to outlive its creator. That's why every communication revolution, from the printing press to the internet, echoes the Bronze Age leap. Each time we invent new ways to preserve and transmit ideas, we're fulfilling the same ancient mandate: make the ephemeral endure. The tablet also hints at communication's darker duality. Standardized symbols enabled trade but also controlled taxes calculated, treaties enforced, power consolidated. Sound familiar? Today's algorithms and digital ledgers grapple with the same tensions. Innovation is never neutral. It amplifies both collaboration and coercion. What began as a merchant's tool likely became a ruler's instrument, just as the internet birthed both Wikipedia and surveillance capitalism. perhaps most moving is the artifact's silent testimony to ordinary lives. History often memorializes kings and conquerors, but this tablet whispers of unnamed traders, accountants, sailors, people who built connectivity without monuments. Their legacy isn't pyramids or statues, but something far more revolutionary: the infrastructure of understanding. Every time we send a text or scan a QR code, we're walking paths they paved. The lesson here transcends archaeology. Whether carved in cuneiform or encoded in fiber optics, communication systems are civilization's lifeblood. They don't just transmit information, they shape what's possible. That Bronze Age trader couldn't have imagined satellites or smartphones, but he'd recognized the underlying miracle: symbols bridging solitude, turning strangers into partners, chaos into order. 4 millennia later, we're still chasing the same miracle, one message at a time. For all we've uncovered about this Bronze Age tablet, the mysteries still far outweigh the answers. Take the symbols themselves. We've decoded a handful, but what about the others? That recurring spiral near the tablet's edge could denote a trade route, a deity's symbol, or even a merchant's personal signature. And why do certain markings appear exclusively on tablets found near coastlines while others cluster around mining regions? These patterns suggest dialects or specialized notations we're only beginning to glimpse. Then there's the haunting possibility that this artifact isn't unique. If one merchant's storeroom yielded such a revelation, how many more lie buried beneath olive groves or modern cities, their symbols waiting to redraw the map of ancient commerce? The real frontier lies in technology we've only just imagined. Quantum imaging, now in its infancy, could someday scan sealed clay envelopes without breaking them, revealing hidden layers of writing like an ancient Russian nesting doll. Advanced spectral analysis might detect trace elements in the clay, tracing tablets to their exact quarry origins and reconstructing trade networks atom by atom. Even AI could simulate thousands of symbol combinations, testing theories in seconds that would take humans' lifetimes to ponder. Picture a neural network trained on every known Bronze Age symbol suddenly recognizing a pattern no living scholar had considered, like deciphering a cosmic joke told 4,000 years ago. But the most tantalizing questions aren't just about the artifacts themselves, they are about the people behind them. Who decided which symbols would mean 20 jars of oil versus royal tax exempt? Was there a Bronze Age standards committee, some gathering of merchants who hashed out this system over cups of spiced wine? Or did it evolve organically, like slang spreading through a marketplace? And what happened when someone cheated? A tablet from Turkey bears symbols that seem altered after firing an ancient forgery caught in the act, or merely a scribe correcting a mistake. Future digs could rewrite the story entirely. Underwater archaeology is now exploring submerged Bronze Age ports where entire warehouses may lie preserved in oxygen-starved mud, their clay tablets intact. Meanwhile, soil analysis techniques can detect long-rotted papyrus or leather that might have carried these symbols too, hinting at a lost ephemeral counterpart to the durable clay records. Perhaps most thrilling is the quiet revolution in museum basements, where researchers are re-examining blank pottery fragments with multi-light imaging, uncovering ghostly symbols invisible under normal light. What keeps scholars awake at night isn't the unknowns, it's the realization that every answer unveils deeper layers of questions. That spiral symbol might link to Minoan religious art, or it could be the Bronze Age equivalent of a "handle with care" sticker. The truth is out there, hidden in unexcavated ruins, in overlooked museum drawers, even in the DNA of ancient clay waiting to tell us where it's been. One thing's certain, this tablet wasn't the endpoint of some ancient system. It was just one node in a vast, humming network we're only beginning to hear. And the signal's getting stronger. As we carefully place this clay tablet back into its display case, we're not just returning an artifact, we're tucking away a key to a door we've only just begun to unlock. Its silent symbols have already upended our understanding of the Bronze Age, proving that even the smallest object can shatter long-held assumptions. But here's the exhilarating truth. This isn't the end of the story. It's barely the preface. Think of how much we've pieced together from this one fragile rectangle of clay trade networks that spanned continents, communication methods that predated formal writing, even glimpses of everyday lives we'd assumed were lost to time. Now imagine what else might be hidden beneath our feet. A single shipwreck could hold a trove of similar tablets, their symbols mapping unknown trade routes. A farmer's plow might one day strike another Rosetta Stone like bilingual inscription, finally cracking this code wide open. The deserts, ocean floors, and forgotten ruins of the world are practically humming with undiscovered conversations, each one waiting to add another verse to humanity's oldest dialogue. What's truly remarkable isn't just the artifact itself, it's what its discovery represents. Every time we brush the dirt off a new find, we're not just learning about the past, we're rediscovering the boundless creativity of the human mind. That Bronze Age merchant who devised these symbols faced the same core challenges we do today. How to build trust across distance, how to preserve meaning beyond memory, how to turn confusion into clarity. His solution, pressing marks into clay, might seem worlds apart from our digital age, but the impulse is identical. We're all just trying to say, across whatever void separates us, I was here. This is what mattered, so let this be an invitation, not a farewell. The next breakthrough could come from anywhere, a lab, a museum basement, maybe even your own backyard. History isn't some closed book gathering dust. It's a living conversation, and we've only just leaned in to listen. Until next time, keep wondering, keep questioning, and remember, the past never stops surprising us. After all, if a palm-sized slab of clay could rewrite centuries of scholarship, just imagine what's still out there, waiting for its moment.